I want to start by saying hello to you, Douglas, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you today. You talked to me off record about an unhealthy addiction to vinyl records and spending time in record shops. How else are you spending your time at the moment? Because you've got jiu-jitsu and a community involved in that. You've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my two main pastimes, I guess you can say, or, there are definitely more than like hobbies, I guess, but the two things I like focus on a lot are, vinyl collecting and jujitsu. Those are pretty much the things I do the most. I go through like I'm finding out more and more, I go through these kind of bouts of depression, and I'm not always like out and about as much. So, I have jujitsu, which is a really great community for like when I do want to be outgoing, and I feel like, those people are people that I call friends for life. So I feel like, they never really leave me and I never leave them, even if I'm not around all the time when I have these moments. And then, with record collecting, that's kind of an inward thing that I don't have to be insecure going to like, to a record shop. I don't have to feel insecure, like stepping outside because I don't really think I'm going to see anyone. I don't know. I have this thing I'm realizing now that I'm dealing with more. And I do want to talk about it more in these moments because I feel like it's healthy to, rather than always just keep it inside. But those are the two things that I like really love to do the most. And I'm grateful that they're both kind of on opposite ends of the coins when it comes to like interaction, because I feel like when I'm not with one, I'm with the other and vice versa. So it definitely is like a nice thing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And talking about community, obviously, you have built a wonderful community around the sleeping, a cult fan base around the world. And we'll talk about your UK fans, as we end the chat towards the end. But the community got behind you, for this new record. I feel like I'm becoming a ghost. It was crowdfunded. It was, a groundswell of support, really. And how do you feel about the community behind the sleeping and the community you've developed, really, and that's enabled you now to come back, bring this record to people, and have this wonderful support you do have in 2023?
Yeah, thank you for that, first off. It's interesting, like if I'm being honest with you, it's been so long. We've all been kind of out of this element, and you know, it's surreal, and I hate saying that because that always feels like a performative term, but it really is like a beautiful otherworldly kind of feeling when you know when you see the people coming together and showing interest in something that you haven't really touched in a very long time, something you haven't visited in a very long time. And to see the Kickstarter make its goal in such a short amount of time, and people really believe in what we're doing again. And I just think it's really cool, and it means a lot to me because I'm at the point of my life now where like music will always be a part of me. I mean, I have a nonstop, collecting addiction with records, and I'm constantly listening to music. I'm constantly playing guitar. It's just one of those things where it'll be with me no matter what. But I'm so out of that element at times, and to be back into it in this really welcoming way. We're all older people. We've all grown up. We're different people, and it's cool because you have a connection to this part of your life, and you remember it as it helped you grow up. Through the good times and the bad, and seeing it all with like, I guess, like a clearer perspective in life is just a really cool thing to notice that there's still people who care, and there's a really great community around it. Because when you seclude yourself from it, like when you stop being in a band, you lose self-confidence. People don't know what it's like. I'm sure people know what it's like in the sense of when you follow a dream, or, you have that one thing you love that, like goes away kind of thing, where, for those who don't know, it's a very difficult thing when you lose a part of what you love. And when your band is your whole life, and this is in the earlier stages of being in a band, when you're like no side projects, like this is the band, like when that stuff goes away, you lose a part of yourself, and you kind of hide away from people, because you're just like, well, man, like, what good am I to people who like worked this record and blah, 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 now that I'm not in a band anymore. And you lose friendships that you kind of thought, they're always still there, but your insecurities get the best of you. when, you're like leaving these friendships, like kind of ducking out of things. So, to be immersed again and see people responding as beautifully as they are, it means a lot, because, it definitely helps me with my insecurity, realize that people still care.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned obviously earlier about that insecurity, and kind of also in that answer, you were talking about the sort of, I guess, changes you go through as you get older. I wonder, what have you learned about yourself? I know you can't speak for the rest of the band here, but what have you learned about yourself during that time away, where you maybe found out that you were struggling with certain things, certain emotions, and things that maybe the band masked? You mentioned obviously you losing some of that self-confidence. So if I was to ask you directly, Douglas, what did you learn about yourself during the time away from the sleeping and those years? What would your answer be to that?
Well, I definitely learned how to, I guess, be an adult. You know what I mean? That's a big
Yeah.
thing. Like you we're all kids, we all grow up, and it's interesting to, grow up being in a band. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting thing. But the experience I've had have really helped me be who I am. I'm much smarter. I can adapt at the drop of a hat. I can live off of $1 if I needed to. You know what I mean? Like, I've learned so much from being in a band, and now as an adult with a wife, and I have a beautiful home and a dog and a cat that I call my children. It's like being in a band has taught me that, you know it's like nice to appreciate the simpler things in life, and not always having to kind of like live this kind of cutthroat mentality of like, where are we sleeping tonight, and blah blah blah. Like, obviously that changes as your band progresses in size and stature, but we've had those moments for long periods of time of not knowing, and to have this sort of path laid out in my life now that I just know is always going to be there and always going to be a beautiful thing, and not change, and disrupt and things like that. I mean, that's something I learned, to appreciate. Even when times are rough in any capacity, it's like, I have a great home base. So I
Yeah.
definitely I appreciate a home base a lot. You know what I mean? I think the importance of that is, I get like anxiety leaving my apartment, on a trip for like 3 days, 2 days, so it's not necessarily saying that's the right thing, but it definitely makes me appreciate kind of having this life here that's set up.
Absolutely, that comfort. And that moves me on nicely, Douglas, to my sort of next question. What was the thought process then? Because as someone that's toured and someone that's been out on the road, to basically now not having to, but choosing to do that to support the record, choosing to go back out there, you know, being in a band again, and the as you mentioned, some of those things, some of those unpredictable things about being in a band. What is that like for you, sort of making that choice to come back and put a record out and go and tour it? Was that a difficult choice for you, given that you've, like I say, you just shared there, and I understand it absolutely, the comfort that you have, I guess, become accustomed to, if that's right?
Yeah, totally. There's definitely that feeling of, I have grown accustomed to, the simpler life, I guess you can say, the
Yeah.
subtle life, not simpler as in like, it doesn't underplay anyone else's, like love, for living a life like this. I had to get used to it. For a while, it was unsettling. I was like, oh my God, I need to be away all the time. But the more I like fell in love with my wife and realized like, oh, this is kind of like what I really want. But it's interesting now because, you know, I think what's really cool about it is we all want to do this on our own terms now. And there's kind of no like all or nothing, even though there is an all or nothing. Like, it's not like we're going to be under a bridge if it doesn't, if it goes sideways or whatever. It's like we all came to the conscious decision to do this again. Everybody's got their lives. Sal has 2 kids. Cameron has been living in Mexico and, kind of living all over the world. Joe tours with Bob Moses as their drummer. So, I mean, everyone's got this other life. and to choose to come back. And I think the catalyst for us was just like, let's just go and make a record and have fun. Let's just see what happens. Let's see what it's going to be like. No expectations, you know, let's just make a record again, see if we even have it together, if the chemistry's still there, you know, which we're all very close, but you know, so many years have passed. Like, let's try this. And, you know, making the record and then getting the record back and hearing it in its entirety and hearing the songs how they ended up, we're like, oh shit, this is good. Like we have something that we've never had before. We've always been proud of our music, but this is by far something very special to us that we just didn't expect, you know. And we're getting like a really great reaction from people already starting to hear the record, being like, oh, this is different, but still you guys, and different in the best way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it was all about, you know, no expectations. And then we're getting all these great responses, and we're like, you know, we can play shows, and we can figure this out. We do want to get back to the UK. We do want to go here for the first time, you know. I think there's a lot of that stuff we still have like unanswered too. Like we just want to go. But you know, it's cool to have something to ground you, because it also lets you realize you can do this in a different way than just like risking your whole lives. I mean, essentially every person who does this is risking their lives every day. You know, we've lost people we love because of this stuff, you know. And I think what keeps us going in that sense is the fact that, like, you know, now we have something that grounds us, where it's like there's, I guess you can say, like less risk assessment, or less, there's less of a risk factor, you know, but still, you know, enough to do it and be happy. Because another reason that we stopped being a band is we were just burnt out. You know what I mean? We didn't want to do it anymore because we had seen arenas and all these great things. And then we're seeing like 30 people a night, 20 people a night. Then some days it's 100 people. Then sometimes it's 300. And it was like, we didn't care about that aspect, other than like, there's just so much anxiety when it comes to the influx. I'm sorry, the fluctuation. Sorry, wrong term. There's so much anxiety when it comes to the fluctuation of everything, that, you know, when you're like here, and then you lose the momentum. After Cameron left, we lost a lot of momentum. You know, we're still proud of the records we made with the people we made them with, but I think it just turned into this thing that was like, we were just fried, you know, we were just done with it. So, you know, we chose, you know, we made the conscious decision to step away from it, still always being best friends, you know what I mean? Always being super close, you know, like Sal and I, you know, I was best man at his wedding next to his brother, and that dude, his whole family's like super religious. We're like, there's usually no other best man. Cameron, Joe, like, I mean, we're all brothers, you know, we talk all the time. Zizzo DJ'd my sister-in-law's wedding in Mexico while Cameron played, you know, we're like, he played guitar, you know, we're all just so close no matter what. We have such a, you know, we are New Yorkers. I'm from Jersey, but we have that East Coast, I guess you can say, that East Coast mentality, where our opinions are just so strong and so biased all the time, where like you would think anyone else would not be able to hack it, but we have each other, and our dynamic is what makes the Sleeping so special. And I think this record was kind of all that stuff at some points coming to a head, but at other points we are so comfortable with one another in our new lives that it just made something even like more vibrant, which is why the record cover has this vibrant feel. You know, there's that whole juxtaposition of me personally, like almost on the verge of losing my mind every day, but also there's so many beautiful things about it. And that's kind of what the cover tried to encapsulate. You know, our friend, who's a great artist, she encapsulated the vibe of the record with the lyrical content.